Let's see how we can work with the axis orientation in Maya. When you use the transformation tool, such as the move, rotate and scale, you can set different orientation for the axis. They can, for example, be set to world or also local, or to the individual components, such as the face, edge and vertex. Keep in mind that usually we are moving the vertices. Additionally, you can set the orientation to the components, like a group of selected components or individual components. For example, let's say that I have extruded these faces in this pipe. Now I use the extrusion tool, and instead of using the gizmo of the extrusion tool, I go on the move tool, and by double clicking I bring up the setting and I change the axis orientation to component. Now when I go to move this extrusion, it will extrude along the orientation of the faces as they are grouped. So let's see what happens then when I do the same thing with these other faces. I select them and then I use the extrusion tool. So now I will extrude it, and instead of using the gizmo, I go on the tool, move tool, and I pull them out, and they come out oriented towards the face that I have selected. Now if I do the same, so I have them extruded again, but this time I'm going to change the orientation of the axis to world and see how it will move differently. So I go directly into the move and I change the axis orientation into world. Now the axes are oriented to the world, so they are oriented to the three axes X, Y and Z. And you can see that it moves along the Y axis. Now if I press middle mouse, drag and pressing Control, I switch to component mode. But in this case, each component moves independently from the group. That's why it gets larger as it moves out. Let's see with the scale of these faces instead of extrusion. So I'm selecting these scales that are two groups of selection, two groups of faces, and I'm using the scale tool. And the scale tool is, actually this time is the move, but I want to use the scale, is oriented to world. And you can see that as I scale along the x-axis, the two groups move together, and you can see that the pivot is in the center. And the same things happen when I switch to component. You see the pivot is in the center and the scaling happens along the average of these selected faces. Now if I do Control middle drag again, I am scaling this single individual component. In this case, every single face is scaling individually, and you see that the effect is dramatically different.